Maya, Tiwari, such a pleasure to be here with you today. Such an honor, and very grateful that to have read your work in the past. The very first book I had ever read on Ayurveda was The Secrets of Ayurveda. And it really had a huge influence on my direction as a healer and as a herbalist, and I still refer to your work, so thank you very much for that.
My pleasure, Chad.
And so you're here on your Living Ahimsa tour in Winnipeg, and you're traveling across Canada right now?
Yes, I am, and this will be the second tour of Living Ahimsa in Canada. Our first occurred in 2010, and we've seen such a major development in attendance and the awareness of the work in Ahimsa that it is really heart-opening. But it is my first time in Winnipeg, and I love the flatlands here, the food basket of Canada.
It's very rich, very fertile land.
Yeah, from the airplane it just was every color of green. Yeah, that's really beautiful to see.
And the essence of this that you're sharing on this tour, Ahimsa, Living Ahimsa, what is that exactly?
Yes, Ahimsa is a Sanskrit word, and it became a very popular word during the reign of Gandhi, Mahatma Gandhi in India. It means literally non-violence or non-hurting, or the ability to peace. But the way that we are doing Ahimsa, the way that we want it to be accessible to each and every person, we're not looking necessarily to free our country, we're looking to free our minds, and looking to develop this understanding which Gandhi and Mandela and Martin Luther King all understood. These leaders were phenomenal in their sacrifice towards celebrating life with integrity, honesty, and justice. Here we would like to celebrate the human spirit of ourselves with that integrity and truth and justice. First though, we need to understand that inner harmony begins within us and not outside of us.
So the true work as far as changing the world, the health of the planet and all of it starts within each individual.
Yes, so often, Chad, we look at changing the world as a task force. And in activism, what we have missed by large, and not that activism isn't necessary, but what we have to do is go back to the core of our understanding of what we're fighting for. In fact, the word fighting doesn't get us anywhere. So what we are contemplating, meditating, and praying for, more than hoping and fighting for, is actually understanding the human inner terrain and what we can do to create inner peace first before we can ripple it outward to the world at large. Because each one of us, as you know, is the microcosm of the macrocosm, or better put, we have the sentiency of the entire universe within the human spirit. And that is what the understanding of one is about. We are one, we belong to each other. And therefore, anytime we lose track of that and become more dualistic in our approach and our thinking, like us and them, victim and perpetrator, and so is killing the earth, and we are out there fighting for the earth. Well, both of us are fighting. One is in the destructive force, and the other one is not necessarily in the creative force. So Ahimsa, the way that I translate it, the way that it has come to me, or through me, from my own vast experiences of rebirths in this life, is basically, it is simple as this. If we choose to be in the creative force, which is the more prayerful force, which is the force that brings us into self-accountability, self-responsibility, and self-governance, then we have a better chance at inculcating and broadcasting peace.
I like how you say broadcasting. So each one of us is like a fractal of the whole living spirit, and that we all can play a role in, if we do our inner work, that in itself changes the whole.
In the Vedas, which I am studied in, from an old and ancient tradition called Veda Vyasa in India, we have a mantra, Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purna Mudachyate. And basically what it means is we are not part of the whole spirit. We are the entire, each one of us is the entire whole. We could not replicate the universe if we were a part. We would not have the memory of safeguarding, nurturance, nourishment, honesty, integrity, truth, fearlessness, ultimately love, unless we were the whole. So it is the whole plus the whole plus the whole plus the whole, or 11 plus 1 equals 1. You know, it's a phenomenal formula. And in that understanding, if we see the action of wrong outside of us, let's say the corporations that are destroying nature, science that's pushing their intelligence to the maximum with no regard to Mother Earth, and so many other engagements that in fact serve to destroy nature. Although intelligent, they're lacking the creative force. They're functional, not intelligent, but they're not functioning creatively, they're functioning destructively. And the result is complete destruction to so many parts of Mother Earth. And also, when we destroy Mother Earth, we are destroying the innate memory of Mother Earth, and therefore the reflection back to us is a lack of memory, forgetfulness.
Yeah, can you say a bit more about that memory that's in?
Yeah, it's a vast topic, and I don't want to speak in circles here, but the understanding of us being one spirit, belonging to each other, because at that vibratory level of spirit we are one. At the physical level of our body and our mind, we are conditioned by our ancestors and prior lives. And even if we don't believe in prior lives, let's say the rebirth in this life, but we are conditioned in the physical frame. So obviously there are differentiation, diversity, which is also necessary. And sometimes because we live through these diversities, the senses, so to speak, the 5 senses, we mistake that diversity and difference for a dualistic nature. But we do not have a dualistic nature. We're different in our karmas and in our purpose. However, we have one nature. It is spirit. And if we can transcend all of our ancestral memories, all of the memories that form habituations, the habit like to respond a certain way if you don't like something, the habit that there's a weak spot or a vulnerability in you that just gets triggered with something that happens out there. We all have different vulnerabilities. And one of the great things about understanding our life in spirit is that we need to be aware of our vulnerabilities, accept them for what they are, and not push them aside and negate them. In fact, it's like a portal. Every challenge gives us the ability to walk through the portal of change, to change that habit and to strengthen that vulnerability. So vulnerability is really an essential part of awareness building.
Growing, developing, unfolding.
And unfolding.
And so, if I understand what you're saying right, the integrity of, let's say, the water, the integrity of the food, the integrity of it is essential to our well-being.
Absolutely, and that integrity is based in our memory. Not only a memory that's synchronized with each other, our memory in the tissue and cell synchronized with the memory of the tissue and cell of Mother Earth. More importantly, the same memory, the sameness of memory floats within us. So therefore, when we look to genetically manipulate food and plunk one memory of a species into another, functionality-wise, the memory of each species determines its function and also its purpose and also its performance. So basically, when we are just linearly plunking memory from one into the other, we create havoc into the sentiency of wherever we're plunking that memory in and wherever we're taking it from. We must understand that memory of Mother Nature is yet to be understood in its full capacity. And when we do, and this is the content of my next book called The Memory Pod, when we do understand this, we would have ever so much reverence for the vast, incredible, immutable nature of our Mother. Right now, it was wonderful in New Zealand, one of the 3rd largest rivers in New Zealand, which we talked about last night, the Wangan Noi, and I hope I pronounced that properly, river was just, New Zealand went to the Crown there and said, we want to make this river a personal entity.
That was really interesting.
Entity, a legal entity, and got the rights. It wouldn't be the first time, by the way.
So the river has, this body of water has a right like a person.
Like a person. And I think in terms of where we're living in the earth right now, that's good enough. However, the river has a cosmic entity.
Yes.
It's beyond that of anything else, because it gives life. It is the fluency of our prana, our breath. It is Mother Nature.
The conductor of...
It is the conductor of Mother Nature. It's so incredible. And what I believe we can do, and right here in Winnipeg, we have Elder Catherine Sinclair, who yesterday began her walk around Lake Winnipeg, which would be, I think she said it would take about 28 days, probably longer, to cover about 1,000 kilometers of footage around the lake, and that is to protect Lake Winnipeg as well. We need to take these precedences that are happening in countries that are more aware of their natural resources to the legal system, legalize it, because then we have carte blanche protection of that water. And I hope I can inspire some of our colleagues in India to do likewise with the river Ganges, which is all river, all water. Every drop of this water is sacred. But the conduits, the sources of our waters are these sacred rivers. And if we can use these precedences to protect the river, then we are also protecting our own river, because memory floats on water in the body. Our physical and physiological and what I call our cognitive memories of how we function, how we remember our past, our ancestors, our habits that don't serve us or do serve us.
I'm looking at the water as a conductor. We know water conducts energy, and in a way, like, we're manipulating through our materialistic views, we're manipulating genetics, but maybe not understanding the vibrational quality of everything, the song of life that's this wholeness. And it's reminding me of something I'd read in Ayurveda, that a lot of disease and a lot of the inner work that we need to do, if I understand it right, is stop just only identifying with the physical part of ourself. Is that right? Or?
Yes, and that identification went back eons of time ago, when we began to eradicate the native mind on our earth, because we were so challenged and threatened by the DNA imprints that came with that mind. And that really, whatever the excuse was, we were challenged by the amazing superhuman mind that our native culture has and still has, even beyond their pain and disempowerment, as it were. And what we need to do in order to reclaim it all is to be in that space of ahimsa within ourselves. We cannot go out in any other mode but the mode of understanding our inner awareness or consciousness, becoming more conscious every day of what is the destructive force in each one of us, what is the creative force in each one of us. Do I choose to be in the destructive or the creative no matter what is happening? I can, of course, it is human nature to be in despair and disease and illness. The physical body is going to break down. It breaks down all the time. That's natural, actually, for a physical organism. The psyche is going to pick up all the things of trained behavior that has been implanted into our ancestral bedrock of the mind. And so basically, we are always going to be reflecting these things, but how do we transcend that?
Yes.
How do we change that?
Through this and
meditation.
yes.
Sitting and saying, I invoke the intelligence of my inner self, because we are actually self-generating intelligence. When we go to fight a war, when we decide we're going to actually pummel science to its nth degree. Well, it's different karmas. We all come in with different purpose. I'm not saying one is right and one is wrong. Altogether, we create the whole. Individually, we are the whole. But oftentimes, when we have the karma of the intellect and pursuing it to the nth degree, we often become myopic. And we don't take into consideration, we are in the thrill of this journey and in the absolute obsessive focus of the journey. And we don't have the memory, recall, to say, let us widen, let us give some inner space on this. Hawkins did. A few of our physicists really had seen that. Our elder and ancient physicists knew that. Our European ancient classical writers understood it and all went to India for this confirmation of information, that they understood that, hey, we are understanding one part of what we can do, but it is subjective. We have not looked at the objective information that Mother Nature is giving us. So science, as we go forward, must make it a priority to listen to Mother Nature's intelligence.
You know, this is bringing something up for me. As I started studying traditional healing methods and history, I realized that it was all men in the history. It seemed like man after man that was this sort of claimed to have discovered this and that about the understanding of the workings of nature. But when I really look at the healing centers and the courses and the gatherings, it's the women, and the women are. And how do you perceive this, you know, maybe descent into hyper-materialism or loss of perspective of oneness and the intellect, and I've heard the Dalai Lama has say that the Western woman is going to save the world, and does that resonate for you?
The Dalai Lama has said that he loves women, and in fact when we meet at the various interfaith conferences, which has occurred several times in the past, I'm always amazed at the fact that he remembers me, because he sees literally millions of people and certainly thousands of spiritual types. So the last time I saw him at the Parliament of the World Religions in Melbourne, Australia, which was at the end of 2009, he actually crossed the hall and came right over to me as he entered the hotel and where he was staying, and he just bowed, and I said, no, I'm the one who's supposed to bow. And so we sort of hit for it together. And I said, how do you remember each one of us, Your Holiness? And he said, you're Maya. Maya is the mother of Buddha. Maya was the name of the mother of Buddha. Yes. You know, so you're Mother Maya. So it was really a lovely moment. He is very, very supportive. But here again, of women and women's rights. But I don't want to limit the power of women to rights.
To rights.
And to the legal rights and social society's rights. Our cultural rights. We have the amazing Shakti within us. Each one of us
what is this
does.
Shakti?
Yeah, men and women both. The incredible power of the feminine spirit to bring forth life, creativity, safeguarding. Our work has always been cut out for us by nature of how we are formed within our structure, anatomical, physiological, psychological, spiritual structure as a female person. And so reclaiming these rights is part of what we do at the Wise Earth School of Ayurveda, which I started in the United States in 1981 as the first school for Ayurveda in the West. Now, the Shakti education is wonderful because it's for men as well, not just women, because we are a supporting force for each other in terms of genders. But getting back to the work of what I think to bring it into the pod of memory for each one of us is that there is nothing right or wrong there's dark, there's light. There's the destructive force and the creative force. Each one of us has the potential to both. And so when we understand that, we can say, for instance, science is a lot myopic, but I understand where their mind is going. Or that the people who are out there fighting wars, it's also myopic. I understand where their force is. The people who are responding in anger to it, we understand where their vision and focus is as well. But beyond all of these situations and challenges, we have the solution. We have to go back into the inner terrain, clear out the clutter and the glut inside of us, clean out those spaces through meditation, through wonderful activity of walking back in nature, learning Mother Nature, breathing properly, and really give up the things that don't serve us, the excess dreams we may have of what everybody else has that we must have to, the time that we spend, how we spend our time with our children, what we buy into from the commercial communities and commercial world that we live in, how much of it we can put asunder and say, I want to reclaim my spirit of ahimsa within me.
Sure,
yeah.
Which is a much deeper process than, let's say, healing through, vitamins and herbs. And I mean, it's not that those things aren't important. It's just
herbs and vitamins and food is the best.
Yeah.
Anam aushadam asti. Food is the best medicine. From food comes herbs. From the herbs come the memory of the human tissue. From the human tissue memory comes, we serve back Mother Earth. It's a cyclical cycle of how we relate to the memories of Mother Earth. There is memory within the plant that we eat. That plant is sacrificing its life to serve the memory of sentiency within the human organism. We process that memory by assimilating it, nourishing the body, the tissues, and then we put it back into Mother Earth. It has more sentiency when we put it back to Mother Earth because it has gone through the human sentient conscious system. Now when we take our food and we tear it apart and we strip the nutrients from it and we plunk in all of the additives and the chemicals and the God knows what else or whatever inane reasons that we can think of, what we're actually doing is we are stripping memory from the food so it no longer has a cohesive or a communicative relationship within the body when we eat it.
So it's very hard to imagine anyone being well or on all levels of their being, or the planet in response to how we're relating to it being well. So it seems like a very core and key, very under-discussed, I think.
It's under-discussed because the understanding is not really there. It hasn't been there for a long time. This work that I started to understand came in while through ovarian cancer at an early age of 18. My life went asunder. It was absolutely split into smithereens, really. And I was forced to walk that journey, the passage between life and death, and spent 5 years in my process through many different therapies, radiation, chemotherapy, surgeries, whatever, while I was in New York. And when I was told that it's most likely I have a death sentence, I moved away and went into a place of my own understanding to die, so to speak, on my terms, if we ever can control our terms, which we can't, by the way. But what happened was the divine grace of the Mother, this Divine Mother, this Mother Earth, this Mother Sky, and Mother Supreme came into an understanding. Because you see, it is not that difficult. Many people at the time of death go through a portal, the portal of light, and your physical anatomy is actually stripping away from the subtle anatomy. It has to, in order to escape, for your soul to leave the body and the physical to be finished with. And in that place is a vista. And in that vista, past memories come back. And it's so extraordinary, because what came to me was the understanding, but then I didn't know it, the understanding of the memory field of this universe. Now, one can say, oh my goodness, that's a big thing to come to you. But I didn't understand it as such first. When I went back to the motherland of India, I am Hindu by tradition and birth, but we grew up in what was then called British Guyana in South America. And my grandparents had been transported there by the British some long time back as indentured people to serve the land and do farming and whatever. My family ancestry were priests, Hindu priests. And they came because they were the first set of Hindu priests to have arrived in the land that was shared between the Africans who were brought there earlier as slaves and the Indians brought as indentured serfs. Now, what basically ended up happening is my return to the motherland was really the first in a couple of 100 years for my people. I met my guru, Swami Dayananda Saraswati, who is India's a phenomenal scholar of the Vedas in India, an amazing, incredible mind and spirit. And he became my teacher for many, many years. And in studying the Upanishads, the Vedas, Taittiriya Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, these are large bodies of work dealing with self-knowledge in the language of Sanskrit. The confirmation of what I had discovered in my fragile years came to pass. And it has taken me now, this is 30-some years later, to actually feel fit enough in my own sentiency and own ahimsa. Until I could fasten ahimsa to my understanding in a very core way, I could not write this book. So the book is called The Memory Pod, and it talks about our relationship with the different content of memory in the universe, the infrastructure of memory in the universe, how through the vibratory field it is reflected in the most sentient of its species, the human beings, that is, and how other species interact and interface with this memory. And when they are naturally made extinct by human actions, basically we lose that part of the memory from the grid. And therefore we can't reflect it either. And so part of the way that we don't remember has to do with a lot of the destruction on our earth already. However, the human person is the most sentient of the species, and we can reclaim that. There's always a safe space inside where we are exempt from our ancestral karmas, we are exempt from the habituations of society, we're exempt from our own past, and we can claim that.
There's a space in there that's like pure and unsullied.
There is a pod inside of us that we can reclaim, and that is what our journey today is about. That's what you're doing, Chad, with your work. That's what we're all doing, and not any one of us can do it alone, because we belong to each other. And those who find that out quickly, that, oh yes, I do belong to you, and you do belong, but not in a possessive way. In the way of brotherhood and sisterhood, to share that we can do it together, and we must do it together.
It reminds me of another concept in Ayurveda, that the true nature of our being is peace and bliss and joy and understanding, and that the rest is just sort of on the surface muddling. And
Joseph Campbell was really giant at bringing this into the field of he was an amazing thinker of our time, as was Krishnamurti our time before, and so many of our Vedic seers, and so many of our native people, Chief Seattle and others, that countless names of the native intelligence that now, by the way, science, I just saw in one of the articles that came to me, that science is only now discovering that the DNA of the North American native people, but it means all the native people of the world, is so incredibly unique. It compares to no other DNA of no other nation.
It's much more complex or something? Or
I haven't read the study in depth to speak to it as yet, but why are we surprised?
It's like code. I mean, I think the computers are a really amazing thing for us to maybe move beyond this obsessive materialism, because now we can understand energy fields that we can't see. You know,
But
we can start to look at nature as, I think at some point people looked at nature and said it's not alive.
Yes, I know. Technology is technology. I'm not going to enter that conversation in this interview.
Yeah.
But we have a bigger computer. We have the mind.
Yes.
The computer is based on the formation of the mind. The language is actually inscribed from the language of Sanskrit. The computer is designed to think like the Sanskrit language.
See, that's fascinating, isn't it?
I know, that's another conversation and another interview.
That is huge.
That is huge. But getting back to what we're talking about, it is important that we do not despair.
Yeah, well, this is what I was. So Maya, what I wanted to ask you was that I get this message from you that there's the creative and the destructive, and also you know, I feel that around me, even at the ceremony we were at last night. We're moving to celebration. We're creating sacred space and joy, but we're also there's people feeling the weight of these times in the Kali Yuga you were talking about.
Yes.
How does this go together, this Kali Yuga phase and this creativity?
I understand that it is a time of transition. It's a huge, vulnerable, fragile time for each one of us. The dark forces are coming out literally in droves. The creative forces are in droves. So basically, we have to understand this is the key to really hope and faith of the future, a future of sentiency and consciousness. The key is to understand that each one of us has the potential to dark, light, and light within us. If we understand that, we are no longer living dualistically, us and them, the dark forces out there and the light forces that we are doing. I see the dark forces all the time. They come after me from one end of the tour to the other. But the amazing thing is I have now been entrained through my own journey of being broken apart so many times. And in this brokenness, I find the most sublime light of understanding. And that is, I am him or I am her. There is really no difference. And I am learning that every day, Chad, and we must all learn it. That is the key to using our creative force to its highest power. If we have still the understanding of dualism as they're the destructive force and we are the creative force, we will not succeed. We will absolutely not succeed in our journey. The creative and the destructive is within each one of us. That we have been privileged enough to have ancestors and behavioral patterns and habits and karmas from before our other ancestors and before their other ancestors, that we've been privileged to have more of the abundance awakening to the creative force is only the privilege of grace. That others have been not so privileged to have their creative force so wide and awake, but shaped as the destructive force always is by the past as well, and by the trials and traumas of the past. No one of us knows what it is to walk in each other's shoe. And when we see that destructive force, we know that hurt was beyond hurt, was beyond hurt, was beyond hurt for that destructive force to be propelled and compelled. We also knew that the hurt was so big that we have to strategize with billions and trillions of dollars to manipulate and strategize and make these forces powerful, whereas when you are in your creative force and in your light, you only need a penny to do good work.
Smooth, this is ahimsa.
This is ahimsa.
This is ahimsa.
This is ahimsa. This is ahimsa at its core. Because you see, if we fall prey to wordology, the wordology of New Age wordology, a life of bliss, a life of celebration, a life of power, a life of, we're still dealing with dualism, the duality of I am becoming creative and in my bliss. Oh, but those people over there are busy bombing this country and they're busy doing this. If we continue to, they're evil and we are good. If we do that, we've lost.
Yes.
One of the greatest ways that the material world of greed and commercialism can actually grab a hold of the mind of a person who think that they are actually holistic in their behavior is to be in that dualistic space.
Light worker, that kind of
Yeah,
languaging.
because that is why we ended up with, we're now going to have a product called bliss, a product called happiness, a product called power. We're going to do power yoga, we're going to do happiness yoga, we're going to do powerful yoga, we're going to do sentiency yoga, we're going to do awareness yoga. But by the same token, we can just as easily have stupid yoga, naked yoga, not so good yoga, unhappiness yoga, despairing yoga, because all of it is wordology. It isn't a question of yoga and medicines, herbology and panchakarma and all of these incredible, wonderful things that are available to us are not the healers. These are going to be invoked to heal you when your awareness is in fine form, operating to make the choices we must make towards creativity.
I think some people might want to ask you in this moment. A lot of people are trying to put themselves on a good path, you know, not a bad path.
Sure.
And they're following these principles of, you know, good and bad. So are you saying we can move, if we rest in our true nature, in ahimsa, in that space within ourselves, that we're naturally moved beyond good and bad, we can trust where we're going? Is it something like that?
It's exactly like that, Chad. I'm not being critical. I'm pointing out the obvious. Most people would not point it out. And that is, we have to get beyond the space of good and bad.
I'm really grateful you're bringing it up.
Rumi said, take me to that field. I will meet you there in that field beyond right and wrong.
Yes, I love
and basically
that.
all the mystics understand this. They understood this because they understand the passages of dark.
There's a purity there.
They understand the passages of light. They understand that they go together. They go together. It is just a question of our awareness always reaffirming, this is creative, this is kind, this is the memory I need to retain. I don't want to fuel the other memory. If someone does harm to me, which happens, then I have invoked my creative spirit so that I have no memory of that.
It's interesting, when I think to my own reference points for that, it feels good. And sometimes when I get up here and I'm trying to decide good and bad, it's just conflict and it's quite draining.
Yeah, and don't get up there too much and don't try and figure it out. Just go right back to the vow of ahimsa, which is, I choose my happiness, I choose my creative force. That's not going to take, I'm not going to allow that to take too much space inside of me. We are always in control of that, but we have to invoke this memory pod. We have to invoke the memory pod within us in order to be able to clearly remember that we have a choice.
Practically, Maya, could you share with us a basic daily practice for a busy person living in this world? Is it a moment to moment? Is it 5 minutes before breakfast? What do you advise?
Meditation works, and there's a wonderful Zen saying about meditation: do 20 minutes a day. And if you're very busy, too busy to do that, do more. And there's no getting around it.
Yes.
But our meditation can be, like those of us who are active, can be walking in Mother Nature, sitting and appreciating the water of a stream with our feet in it, sitting under her tree and looking at the light filter through, the golden light filter through her exquisitely illumined neon leaves, watching the bird fly and understanding that we can put more wind behind our wings. We really basically have to come to a kind space within ourselves. And if it takes 5 minutes every morning to remember that kind space, that I have a choice today, and if I run into certain challenges, I will not let it overwhelm my mind. But when the challenges come and we don't remember, it does overwhelm. So we have to keep remembering, and that's why I say this peace mandala that we do by putting the seed onto the earth. The seed is actually our memory pod. It is Mother Earth's memory pod.
I like that mudra.
It is connected to my mother. It shows our gratitude of her, because without gratitude we can't remember a thing. But gratitude is also part of a memory.
Gratitude.
So we don't remember gratitude because we are losing our memory. And so basically that seed helps us with the physical action of the hands, as you know, in your own herbal medicines that you are so excellent at, Chad, that the 5 elements course through our entire body and comes through the extremes of our hands, each finger and toe representing that element. So we're using the element to transform that memory. Now I will remember because I've done the action to remember. So too, the action of just saying, I'm going to take a little time and just create a little space, even 5 minutes. I do my mantra, whatever that may be, or I do my beads, japa, meditation with my mantra, or I just sit and allow the mind to just be, not control it, not try to control it, just let it be. Learn any form of meditation learn any form of meditation that stills our being. The mind is faster than the speed of light, so we're not going to be able to control it. And I think that is a great metaphor for we can't control much of anything, actually. However, we do have some control of our inner space and how that plays out in the course of a day. And for busy mothers with children, busy family fathers with major jobs, we have to reanalyze and reassess what brings me happiness. What is it that will make me happy?
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are looking for a way to have an effective action, and what you're sharing here is it's more than rallying against this and petitions against that. It's going inward, and it's finding that space where our sentience can be enkindled, more of our fullness of our being, our natural.
It is most definitely rallying with ourselves.
Yes.
In a positive way, in a healing way. Healing happens all the time. A disease is just part of the experience that can break open ourselves to bring more light, as in my case with ovarian cancer. It changed my path and my destiny. I was a fashion designer of some renown in New York City, and at a very early age, and cancer rerouted my path back to the ancestral ground. And then, as you know, many years later, having walked in robes and as a monk, I also, certain incidents that followed me about, rerouted my path. Again, that didn't sidetrack me, by the way, but it showed me that the path to our inner freedom, each one of us, is not necessarily robed. So my heart became unrobed.
And you don't wear your robes these days?
Well, I not only don't wear my robes these days, I have taken a life change.
Yes.
I am, funnily enough, the same identical purpose, a different path.
Right, a different way.
A different path. A path that is not so structured. A path that invites, embraces, and is accessible. A path that is one of true service, and I hope I can become a true servant of this work. And that's really the only dream that I have.
From what I can see, you're doing an amazing job. It's amazing. Mother Maya, one last question for you. On your nightstand, or when you go to reading, do you have any favorite teachers, authors that are in book that people could explore out on their own in the world?
Yes, and I must say of late I have not been doing a lot of reading because there's so much I need to pour out with the books in the recesses of wherever they're stored. Right. And also there comes a time there, during the studies to become a Vedic monk, we read and read and read and read and read. My eyes became tired. But what I can recommend, yes, there's so many incredible books. The works of of the great masters, really, who teach us that our mind is really. I go back to the playwrights of Goethe and Ibsen and Chekhov and Shaw.
Really?
They were the works that shaped my earlier life. Literature was the work that shaped my earlier life. I'm not good at popular reading, I must confess. I do skip through books, but there's so many incredible authors. There's my friend Deepak Chopra, his works on our the soul, you know, the journeys of our soul. The work that he has done in terms of perfect health and his bringing quantum physics into the equation of to widen the mind and how we look at things. There are works of this gentleman who write about nonviolent communication. What is his name? Rosenberg, is it? Beautiful books, a series of beautiful books that I think is very, very essential for anyone who is in doing social service work, such as myself, for society and culture and everything else, which is how do we begin to speak in this non-dualistic language? First, we have to understand non-dualism to speak in that language. So that has been important in terms of my own reading of late. And then I can go back and look at this wonderful woman who was the Holocaust survivor from the Netherlands, who her name was, what is her name? Anyway, she survived it, and it is a beautiful book being made into a movie right now.
Inspiring.
Yes, we'll have to add that name later because people are now all going to wonder who was she. And she survived it. Her sister died in the Holocaust, but how she survived it was phenomenal. So I go into various places of reading. I have so many good friends. I've got Carolyn Meese, whose work is so well known as, which she calls herself a medical intuitive, and women who are perfectly incredible writers. Northrop, Dr. Christina Northrop for women. Her books are different but similar to some of the books I write for women's healing. So I think those would be good. But I love poets. I read Rumi, I read Tagore. I go back more and more into poetry.
Yes.
As much as I can.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing everything that you're sharing. And it's such an honor to be here with you. Namaste.